East, West, and South. Now it sounds like we're going to gerrymander the school district just like they gerrymander the council districts, and I certainly would not support that idea. We are always going to have busing because parents ought to have choices, and if they want a special program and want to go to a special school, that ought to be an option. Realistically, given the demographic of our student body and where our student body resides, there are simply not enough schools, and everyone here knows that, whether they want to admit it or not, in particular locations. Everyone would, I'm sure, like to go back to neighborhood schools. The mother on Lawrence Street would like it as much as the mother on Crestwood Avenue. But the buildings are simply not where they need to be right now. That's a long-term issue. And we also are always going to have special needs children who require special help, and that is always going to be a big part of it too.
Mr. Spano?
70% of our kids come from Southwest Yonkers. When you look at that number, clearly there aren't enough schools in Southwest Yonkers to house our kids. I believe in neighborhood schools. I think most people in Yonkers do. Obviously, I think everyone has to have an opportunity to go to any school they choose. But I think that given that chance, most people choose school in their neighborhood. So if in the past 8 years we built no schools. 8 years prior to that we built 3 new schools. 3 new schools. We have to build schools. And that's the only way we can make any substantive change if we want to have our kids in neighborhood schools. And that the people who live in the west side of Yonkers have every right to a good, clean environment where they can learn as much as the people on the east side. And I think that if we start investing in schools, the dollars we can use will be the dollars we save on the bus.
Against one-shots, and now you proclaim the wonders and the joys of the gimmicks and borrowing against next year's money and spin-ups that you and your brother have bought home year after year because you've been unable to fix the problem. Back to construction for a second. Why does Buffalo get reimbursed 95% for its new school construction? Yonkers gets less than 50% from the state.
Mr. Spano, you want to respond?
I'm so glad that we brought this up. This is a good discussion. Each and every year, our mayor comes into a room like this, and what he'll do is he'll hold up charts of Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo and say, we don't get the same number of dollars that they get. And you know what? We cheer, we scream, great, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And you know what? At the end of the day, we win the argument here, but we lose it in Albany. A formula is created to drive more dollars to places that need it and less dollars that obviously have less of a problem dealing with their issues. We get more money per aide than New York City does, per pupil. We get more money per pupil than New Rochelle does. We get more money per pupil than White Plains does, than Port Chester does, and Mount Vernon does. Why? Because that's the way the formula works. This here is just a chart. What I've been able to do is your state legislator. Look at that. If you can see that chart, that's $100 million. $100 million in new aid, reoccurring aid, that I've been able to achieve as your state legislator. Because education is a priority in my mind. And that is what has been lacking here in our city for a long time. The schools are not our responsibilities. That's what they say. They're someone else's responsibility. That's wrong. Our kids deserve better, and I'm going to change that.
You want a final thought here, Mr. Murdoch?
Rochester, less aid than Syracuse. You can't sugarcoat it. And for all that money that you allegedly are bringing home, I got to ask why the buildings are falling apart, and the teachers are getting laid off, and the kids are doubled up in the classrooms.
Because you're on a council.
Okay, gentlemen. Okay, excuse me. Let's remember, no pep rally here. Okay. Let's go on to the next question. It's on charters.
First of all, I'd like to point out, Mr. Spano, the mayor shouldn't be the cheerleader for the school system. The mayor should be the cheerleader for the school children. And whatever works best for the children is what the mayor should be cheering for. And frankly, regarding class size, I'd have to defer to my wife on that, because my wife is the educator in the family. And I know how strongly she feels about issues like that. I'm no expert on class size. I'm going to defer. Okay,
how many kids are in her classroom right now?
Well, she runs a nursery school with 350 families in it. I'm not sure how many children are in any one class. I would defer to the people who actually know how to run a school system day by day, who know how to educate. I don't think the mayor should be deciding curriculum. I don't think the mayor should be making every one of those decisions. Our classes are overcrowded. We know that. But I'm going to rely on the people who know day by day intimately how to educate children because it's what they've dedicated their lives to.
Okay, Mr. Spano, what's appropriate here for student-teacher ratio?
Right now, as you know, the contract is 30, and my niece is actually a teacher in the Yonkers School District. She has 32 kids in her classroom. Teachers, parents, our children, they're all having a rough time. So what is appropriate? I'm not an educator, and I can't tell you what. I would tell you this, as a parent, what's appropriate is the smallest number possible. Well, how do we do that? Well, that's going to be
Mr. Calvi?
the top part.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Calvi?
I think a specific number, that's an educational policy question, but it's also, again, intertwined with a fiscal policy question. I remember going to Catholic school, and some of those nuns could handle 50 or 60 kids in the classroom. I was a teacher at Manhattan College, and I lectured to 150 kids in a lecture hall. It depends on the circumstances, but I think that is a decision better left to the trustees and to the superintendent.
Okay.
This is the largest number of English language learners. There are other programs. There's an emergency program that they have in White Plains, which actually will be a little more intensive in making sure our children learn the language fast. What's happening in Yonkers is you might have an hour and a half of learning English, but then you might spend the rest of your day in a classroom where they're teaching a language you still don't yet understand. It's about dollars. And it's that type of situation that actually works best when you're lobbying either the federal government or the state government for money. And when you're lobbying them for dollars to say, hey, here we have the biggest problem here, and the emergence program is potentially one of the ways we can deal with that, then there's a vehicle for which has to get some additional dollars. And
Before I spoke English, and quickly had to learn English because that was the language in the schools. I do believe that the Spanish-speaking population needs some support, but we also need to aggressively educate them in speaking English. Whether that means involving the parents, I think it might. We need to look at programs that would enhance the ability of the students and the parents to begin to use English as their primary language.
We have the largest percentage of English as a second language students now, and certainly we have to address the language issue, but frankly, for those new immigrant families and their children, the issues go well beyond mere language barriers. They go to social issues, they go to financial issues. I prefer that we start thinking about a system modeled on what they're doing in Boston, where they have partnered with the Boston College Education School, and they have taken several of their particularly difficult inner city schools and created whole programs for the whole family. So you're not only dealing with the language barrier, but you're helping that family, and most especially those children, with all the adjustments they're going through, so that the kids have a head start and a leg up on education. Advocate for the school system. The mayor does not run and should not run the school system day to day, but that's why I put out a proposal, as I said, about 4 months ago, for a special assistant right in City Hall, not only on educational issues, but frankly on all youth and child issues. We have to refocus our energies on the youth of this city. And obviously, the mayor does appoint the trustees, and the mayor has to be held accountable for every aspect of the city. So they'll measure the success of the school, and 4 years from now, if I'm the mayor, they'll measure my success as well.
But how will they know? Is it by test scores? Is it by graduation rates? Give us something specific that will tell, that you can tell voters you've done the job.
Diana, I'm not going to say we're going to teach to the test, and I'm not going to say that mere numbers measure child success. I think parents know when their children are getting a good education.
Okay. Mr. Calvi, can you be specific on how
Let me
voters
just
should grade you or judge you?
Let me just first say that status quo is unacceptable. My two opponents, I believe, are arguing some minutia about how to make changes, but they're still within the framework of what we have now. I'm the only candidate who's put forward a specific concept for reforming the schools. Some of it needs to be studied, some of it needs to be examined, but we cannot keep just complaining about not having money and crying to Albany to give us more as a way to improve the schools. With respect to, how we're going to know, I guess when I get reelected for the second term, then we'll know that I did a good job as an education mayor.
That's not going to get the job done. What we need, aside from the education redesign team, we're going to ask that redesign team to put in place a real 5-year plan. A 5-year plan that will mark out and benchmark and give us real goals that we have to achieve. What are those goals? Obviously, increasing the different areas of education that our children need to be exceeding in. Starting right with the graduation rate. A third of our kids don't graduate. That's unacceptable. The amount of money we spend, all of our children should be graduating. But if you look at the pre-K experiment in Yonkers, where Yonkers had a full pre-K, and that's why we need to be able to get back to that program, and that will be a part of the administration as well.
Okay.